Welcome to the Junior High Timpani Etude Set 1. As you listen to Jace's performance, you'll hear a lot of care in his sound and how he's crafting all of the phrases. But all of that starts with a great fundamental understanding of stroke on this very beautiful and complex instrument. So Jace, if you could just take us through, could you play us some quarter notes, maybe here on the 29-inch timpano? And I want you to watch, his ear is monitoring his sound, and watch the follow through, and most importantly, folks, the fluidity by which he listens to his quarter notes through motion. Do you see how round his sound is? Because he's thinking about constant motion. Now he's going to play a little faster, maybe triplets, and he's going to alternate, and watch how that same concept is smooth as silk. So he's playing a variety of dynamics, but at no point did he leave the mallet down into the drum. And so the color of his sound is consistent as he's taking us from soft to loud. Great job, Jace. Now we're going to talk about that opening phrase here, folks. And the very first thing right out of the gate is an ornament, and it's soft. 1, 2, 3. So watch Jace kind of dig into that little ornament so it's really clear. Then he opens up his hands. Can you play that first opening measure for us, Jace, please? Do you hear that the ornament doesn't get in the way of his primary note? And he has shape. Great job. So now we introduce the concept of a triplet, and then we weigh that against the dotted eighth and the 16ths coming up. But before we do that, we're not only going to talk about the importance of a beautiful characteristic tone on the timpani, but also where to play, and then how do you stop that sound. So let's do this, folks. Let's zoom in on Jace's right hand on the 26-inch timpano and his left hand on the 29-inch timpano. And let's just play some quarter notes, Jace. Just right, left, right, left. Now I want you to pay attention to, yes, his sound, but why he's getting that sound. Look where he's playing. Fantastic. So you'll see that he's not playing anywhere towards the middle. That's a very special effect that we might use in more sophisticated literature down the road. 99% of the time when you play this beautiful instrument, you want to think about the most sweet spot in terms of overtones and fundamental. And depending on the drum, it is very close to the rim. So Jace, could you put your left hand on the 29-inch spot and leave it there so we could see? Yeah. And then the right hand, put that out there on the drum. And now he's going to do that with his mallet. So you can see where he's going to play with his mallets. So he pulls back and he finds that spot. Now, if he wants to play maybe a little bit of a more distant tone, he's going to pull back even further. The only spot that I would recommend you never ever play is anywhere close to the actual rim. Not only would you induce damage, but of course it gets too thin. And then of course anywhere too close to the middle. Finding that sweet spot is up to your ear. But a good general spot is finding that motion right between the tension rods in a little arc. So you'll see Jace is going to twist his torso and show us, Jace, between the 29, 26, and 23, kind of where your mallets go in a windshield wiper sense. Do you see how he's set up so that when he rotates his trunk, his hands and his mallets are ready to go? That is really, really important to create great sounds. Fantastic. All right, we're going to move on. This is letter A. So now we have some contrast, the sforzando. We're going to go all the way to letter B. So there's a lot of strong sforzando. We drop down to mezzo piano, then a long phrase. Then that'll give us an opportunity to talk about muffling next. Excellent. So the care that we talked about in where to play to achieve a really characteristic sound is also the best spot for you to dampen the drums. Now, it's not a total mute. Notice I use the word dampen. So you're going to dampen the drums. It will not completely go away. And I think that's the trap that a lot of younger players fall in, is they try to over-mute. They use too big of a muscle grouping. They're using their whole arm, or they're loudly pushing on the head. Watch Jace play one note, and he's going to thoughtfully look down, and he's going to push with the pads of his fingers gently in that same beating spot, and listen how cleanly and intentionally he is about muffling. Do you hear that he was showing different note lengths? You can muffle quickly, you can have a little bit of body to the note, but in both cases, he's being very intentional about muting right where he played, and he's not slapping at the note. My rule is this: if I can hear you muffle, it is now part of the music. It's an additional note. That's why that's why muffling is really, really a big part of the care of this instrument. Great job, Jace. Let's move on and go B to C now. B to C starts with a really long hairpin up to forte and back down to piano, then a less intense hairpin up to mezzo forte, and then finally one strong forte with a muffle, and then C. We dampen right before C. So this is B to C. Watch his roll speeds, and then watch how he's always keeping the shape very important. Beautiful. So he creates that drama. 1, 2, 2, 3, muffle, and then we have a little bit of a deceptive moment. At C, we start softly. Great job, Jace. There's one more technique that you're seeing Jace do that we have not talked about, and that's a crossover. A crossover is a really important technical skill here on the timpani in terms of being able to negotiate really clear articulated patterns without necessarily needing to do a double. Now, having the ability and the hand quality to play a double is also very, very important. And honestly, that's a great skill and an option to have at some points. But a better default mechanism is to alternate on these drums, because the heads are a little bit lower, the drums are bigger, and when you alternate, you get a clear sense of articulation as a general rule of thumb. Hence why we need to work on our cross-sticking. So could you show us, Jace, how you go from, say, the 26-inch drum to the 29? So he's going to start in a position on the 26. He's going to go right, left, right, and he's going to freeze. And you'll notice that when he does so, he's going to cross at the wrist level like this. Play, play, play. And he's going to use his wrist to clear the other wrist. And if it's a big distance, like 2 or more drums, he's going to clear with his forearm. So you'll just notice that he's going to look down and he's going to pay attention to where he strikes his right hand on the 29. Great. Can you do the opposite, Jace? Let's go left, right, left. As you get more comfortable with cross-sticking, you will be able to discern your tone and the evenness of your technique, but always look where you're playing. I would say on this instrument, it is vitally important for you to have great tone to look where you strike. So yes, the music is in front of you, but moving your chin, looking, and being active as a player makes you hyper aware of your tone. Fantastic. Now let's close it out, Jace. Let's go ahead and play C to the end. And now I want you to watch where he starts letter C. Could you just play a piano roll for us, Jace? Watch his roll speed here, folks. He's going to get the concept of tone and resonance in his ear, and he's going to hold it based on a roll speed he likes. And now, that same drum, he's going to play forte and hold it. So you noticed his roll speed was much quicker. That intensity is needed to really make sure that the sound waves and the nodal points are avoided all the way through. So now we're going to take C and go to the end, and right off the bat you'll see him crescendo up to mezzo forte. So watch his hand speed go from one thing to another and then back down or relax. Okay, this is C to the end. Did you hear how cleanly that he muffled the release of the etude? One, da-ka-da-ka, muffled the top drums, then he went to the next drums. And he looked exactly where he played, and he was intentional about pushing very gently with the pads of his fingers to avoid a buzz sound or a slap sound. Great job, Jace. At this point, we've talked about tone. We've talked about the relaxation and the fluidity you need in your stroke on this beautiful instrument to make sure that you're getting a characteristic sound. Beyond that, we've also talked about muffling, we've talked about beating spots, we've talked about articulation. As you watch Jace's performance video, try to model the way he moves, but most importantly, really think about all the technical aspects through the lens of incredibly rhythmic accuracy and then tone and expression after that. Because remember, musical character comes from great rhythm first. Thanks, Jace. Sounded great. Well done, sir.